What do you want your future to be? Whatever it is that you want your future to be, it begins on the edge, just like we saw with radio so many years ago. I like to be on the edge as far as I can without falling off. Because out on the edge, you see things that you can't see from the center. The edge is where everything begins and starts its migration towards the development of our context for the times for which we live. And context today is perhaps never been more important because we're actually living in an abolition of context. You know, it used to be that mainstream dictated where the fringe could reside. Now the fringe pulls the mainstream wherever it feels like, and usually backwards and through a keyhole. This is how you get Ozzy Osbourne as the poster child for fatherhood today. We are living in a time that is culturally schizophrenic, where the head of a state like Iran could call for the wiping off the map of a country named Israel, and for that matter, my own country as well, where a despot in Asia could decide that he, under any circumstance, could have nuclear weapons, where we see the fabrication of reasons to go to war. Cultural schizophrenia is really nothing more, nothing less than the gap between the world as we intuit it and the world as it presents itself. And much to this environment that we begin our innovation quest on comes from the concept of a world that is being driven by change that has become autocatalytic. It feeds itself. It's no longer about change in the rate of change or change in the amount of change. It's change that creates its own as it goes. Much like Mount Everest, you can't predict the weather on Mount Everest. It makes its own weather. Autocatalytic change, you know, when I stand here and people think I can predict the future, I go to cocktail parties and people say, oh, you're a futurist. You could tell me my future. And I say, well, I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you. I write these jokes. So I know that sounded much better from Tom Cruise to Kelly McGinnis in Top Gun. But having said that, the only thing I really know about the future is that an optimist has a pretty good future and a pessimist has a pretty crummy future. But what I find interesting is they have the same things happen to them. How you organize your view of the future has an awful lot to do with what happens in that future. And we're organizing our view of the future around this autocatalytic change. Truth be told, the great angst in the world today is not the movement from the industrial to the information age. It's the movement from the information age to the post-information age. Not the eradication of what the information age has brought to us, but yet another new layer of the onion being put onto society. And I have given that a name, intriguingly, before the events of the past 4 years, of the epic of uncertainty. The only certainty today is a constant string of uncertainty. People don't go to work with any certainty they know how to do their jobs. We don't retire with any certainty that we'll have enough money. Perhaps the most intriguing change in the last 12 months in the world is that the actuarialists have actually raised the age of the table to 120. It used to be if you lived to be 100, you were off the chart. Now the chart goes to 120. I'm quite convinced that my 15-year-old daughter will probably live to be 125 years old. This is the kind of autocatalytic change we're seeing. And think for the last 4 or 5 years for yourselves. From 9/11 to blackouts, to SARS, to the war, to the Spanish elections. I think those are important because they prove that terrorists can and do change behavior. to the tsunami, to hurricanes, to the earthquake. It's one after another after another. And so let's look at these issues that drive the zeitgeist, the human condition, or human progress with a small p, the geopolitical agenda that's taking us over the next 20 years, how and where we'll be able to create wealth. What is it that's driving the social agenda? How we come together in community, and how people are embracing and accepting technology. If we start by looking at geopolitics, we come to realize that we're soon on the precipice of the post-America world, where everything is about going global. In the United States, it's about staying on top. This is why at least one administration believes that in a one superpower world, we should be imperialist in my country. I am happy to tell you that most of my countrymen don't agree with that. For China, it's about becoming on top. And wait till we see what happens when Beijing bursts on the world scene in 2008 after hosting the Olympics. There are over 400 million English-speaking people in China today. 400 million English-speaking people in China, more than all of North America combined. In Europe, we see two bifurcated things happening. One is the opportunity in a new world for a social utopia that's been something that's been talked about for centuries. And then we kind of seen what I like to call Poland-Ireland access of recognizing that the world is flat and joining that global community. And in Japan, we see that we're truly trying to stop a meltdown of cultural, biblical proportions. When we look at the economics of the world, we see three great issues coming forth to us. First is what I like to call intellectual property economics. Not just whether or not someone's paying the royalties on a bootlegged CD, but true intellectual property. You know, the official airline guide that lists every flight from here in Brussels to every other city in the world makes more money than all the European air carriers combined. That means that the value of the information about a transaction may have eclipsed the value of the goods or services being transacted. Let me try that again for you. The networks in the United States where I live pay more money for the rights to broadcast the National Football League than it would cost them to buy every team in the league. This means the value of the information about a transaction may have eclipsed the value of the goods or services being transacted. Or you have to think about whole new ways to create value and where wealth is stored and can be tapped. You know, as a result of World War II and the Marshall Plan, $1 trillion from Europe comes every day and clears the Federal Reserve Board Bank in New York City. $1 trillion a day. We have George Marshall in my country to thank for that. And of that money that comes to the United States, what I've learned from bankers is you just have to touch it for a second to create great wealth for yourself. Just touch it for a second. Just have it pass through your hands. How do you participate in the ways that that can happen? Are you familiar with click-through revenue, where just the fact that you can send someone through a network to someone else, they pay you money as a click-through, meter click? Or have you learned the art of the short view? We are all, of course, very well aware of the art of the long view. And I'm not suggesting you give up on that, but paradoxically, you have to have the art of the long view and the art of the short view in simpatico. The art of the short view would be how Honda came to recognize that over 100 million people downloaded a 4-minute advert on the internet in the period of months. If you can get 400 million people to send you 10 euro in a month, I hope you're interested. But like waves to a beach, these opportunities come and go. They're the short view opportunities. How do you participate in this whole new way that wealth and value is created? And we have to learn how to manage new global risk. And of course, the paradox of risk today is you can't afford not to take it.